Hello, Tampa. Mayor Jane here. As many of you know, June is widely known as Pride Month. For many, that has become synonymous with parades and festivals that draw millions to celebrate the advancements in LGBTQ protections. A time to celebrate our diversity and inclusion. But in fact, Pride is a commemoration of a flashpoint in history. A street protest that grew from LGBTQ patrons of the Stonewall Inn in New York City, led in part by trans people of color who fought back against the police. It was commonplace 50 years ago for police to harass and arrest people for no other reason than their presence at the Greenwich Village Club that served the LGBTQ community. For 6 days, police and a growing swell of protesters clashed out in the streets. More than 5 decades later, Stonewall is still celebrated as a time when a community said enough is enough and intensified the work of securing equality under the law. Today, Pride Month arrives as people have once again taken to the streets in response to injustice. The death of George Floyd has drawn widespread condemnation, including from within law enforcement. The world watched for 8 minutes and 46 seconds as he was murdered. Those searing images became a catalyst for nationwide demonstrations that continue today and are fueled by a deeper pain, a long-standing grievance with which we must all grapple. I stand here as a 60-year-old woman who has benefited from those who stood up at Stonewall when I was only 10 years old. I also stand here as someone who has proudly worn the uniform of a police officer and a police chief. Throughout my career, I have worked hard to serve and lead in a manner that demonstrated my commitment to inclusion and respect for everyone. I've lived up to that standard often, and at times I've fallen short. 5 years ago, I apologized for an initiative that occurred under my leadership. I apologize because I listened and came to the understanding that that tactic caused tension and distrust in the very neighborhoods we were trying to help. Now, days of street protests are unfolding in our city. Protesters have every right to take to the streets and express their grief, frustration, and anger, and their First Amendment rights deserve full protection. As a career law enforcement officer and now mayor to all of our community members, I see events unfolding on a mental split screen. I'm listening to the anguish, the outrage, and the anger of protesters who see in George Floyd the long history of contentious relationships with the police. A nation where the mere utterance of the phrase Black Lives Matter is often met with anger and pushback. On the other screen, I see my law enforcement family, many of whom I served with on patrol and as the police chief. I see people who have risked their lives to save a stranger, who've reached into their own pockets to help the victim of a crime. I've seen good, honorable, caring, and decent men and women who embody what it means to protect and serve. So how do I reconcile both of these pictures? I believe we have to listen beyond our own story. I believe police officers across the country are placed in an impossible position of navigating the failures of systems across the board. Poverty, healthcare inequities, education, employment, and the lack of mental health infrastructures. Police are called in because of loud music, barking dogs, and other issues because we are losing the ability to communicate as neighbors and resolve things that should be dealt with on the front porch, not in the back of a patrol car. But despite the stresses and strains placed on police, we cannot make excuses for bad behavior. The powers provided police to stop, detain, and restrain are immense. No other profession is authorized to use force, including lethal force when necessary. With that power comes an incredible responsibility, and that requires greater accountability within the profession and to the community. As police chief, I ushered in changes that were designed to increase accountability, transparency, and communication between officers and the community. Every profession has within its ranks some who do not meet the standard of conduct. Those few in policing who abuse their power, inflict harm when force is not needed, humiliate and provoke not only fail the community, they place their fellow officers in greater danger by destroying trust, creating resentments, and igniting rage. I'm proud of our policies our police department has adopted to de-escalate and provide accountability. Policies that have often been touted as a national standard in good policing. But I know that policies alone are not enough. Cultures within police departments have had to change over time. There was a time when Black people were not permitted to serve, a time when women were barred and when gay people needed not apply unless they hid. The culture of policing has shifted. Today, I look at protesters and I know their grievances and history are real. We as a society must change the way we address community safety, not just with arrest, but with real justice, with an investment in services that relieve the police of roles they were never intended to play and for which they're not adequately trained or equipped to handle. And I hope that those who see Tampa police officers will know the men and women that I know. Decent, brave, caring professionals who have dedicated their lives to serving our community. Let's see the common humanity and work together to be a better place. Let's all see beyond our own story. I will listen to understand and act to make Tampa a place where everyone is included, respected, and protected as equals. Thank you all, and God bless.